Right. So far we've been talking about why changing age demographics is an important HR issue and how institutions like the national government or international institutions have responded to this. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the HR implications for this. And we'll start off by having a very brief discussion about the older workforce as a whole. Of course, the older workforce is not a homogenous group. People don't become more similar as they age. And you can, in fact, as people age, probably some inequalities in the workforce and inequalities when it comes to experiences in work are going to grow. They're going to be exacerbated. So somebody who enters the workforce in relative poverty, they have low paid jobs, precarious work, and so forth, aren't going to have the capacity to save towards retirement. So as they reach retirement age, they're going to be in a even more precarious position relative to those who have been able to save towards retirement. You can divide the older workforce up into three broad groups. One is the majority of the population who are relatively happy in their jobs and consider themselves fairly secure in work. They found an occupation which suits them, which keeps them motivated, makes good use of their skills, and they're happy to continue with that into retirement. But you also have a minority of people who feel very stressed in work and very anxious. They might feel that they need new skills in order to do their job productively. They might have, to use a term that we've used before, a feeling of being an imposter, having imposter syndrome, because they're in a job which they don't think that they're carrying out efficiently or well, and they're reluctant to ask for support, such as retraining or adjustments to their work routine in order to do the job better. Because if you ask for training, some people fear that this is a signal to their employer that they're not doing their job efficiently right now, and they might fear that this is a signal to a reason for the employer to get rid of them rather than to support them in becoming more employable. And you have a third group of older workers who are either unemployed or they're in very precarious work. And it's very difficult for this group of people to get into secure and sustainable work. And what the people in the second group don't want to happen is they don't want to be pushed into the third group. They don't want to be pushed out of relatively secure work, especially as they're coming up to retirement, for fear that they'll have a very precarious work and retirement future ahead of them. Older workers are in general, and I use the term in general as a very important caveat here, because of course not everybody has the same experience. These all come from a survey which is done by the CIPD, the UK HR Professionals Organization. In general, older workers relative to their younger contemporaries are more likely to report that workload is about right, work-life balance is about right, and they have a good relationship with their managers and co-workers and so forth. Most report that they're planning to retire after the age of 65. In fact, the average planned retirement age is actually 66 and a half. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's retiring at 66 and a half, but the expectation is that for older workers is that they'll work a little bit longer. A lot of people expect to work longer, but they don't actually do so. So they might have a health condition which pushes them out of work early. And in fact, in a country like the UK, where there's undersaving towards retirement, those who are poorer and those who have undersaved towards retirement are more likely to say that they're going to work longer, mainly out of financial need than anything else, but they have fewer opportunities to actually do so. They're less likely to report excessive pressure in work or looking for another job. If there's a redundancy, or if there's some fear of workforce restructuring, they're more likely to be worried about this because their confidence of finding a new job is much lower than it would be for younger workers. They're less likely to report having gone through a performance review or an appraisal. And on the one hand, you might think that they sound very lucky, because who wants to go through a performance review if you don't have to? On the other hand, a lot of the times when managers have performance reviews, there's also a discussion of what the employee wants from work. Where do you see yourself over the next 5 years? Would you like new training? Would you like to try something new? And if those conversations aren't being had with older workers, then they might find that they have fewer opportunities to make changes in work than younger workers would. Older workers who choose to work longer, for example, might choose to work beyond the state pension age, report that it's a combination of both extrinsic and intrinsic benefits which motivate them to do so. So the extrinsic benefits, such as money, are very important, especially for those who have undersaved towards retirement, but so too are the intrinsic benefits of the job. Work giving structure to their work, to their week, giving them a mission, a sense of identity, maintenance of social networks are all very important factors which encourage older workers to delay retirement. And who are motivated to stay? Well, first, those who are in work which isn't excessively pressurized, which has good work-life balance, which gives them some flexibility in balancing their work and retirement activities. Those who are more likely to report having a good relationship with their manager, so that they can have conversations about what their expectations are. In the UK, many employers have a lot of fear of having a conversation about retirement with their older worker. They might fear, for example, if I ask my older worker at what age they plan to retire, then I'm going to be hauled before an employment tribunal on an age discrimination complaint. In reality, the government has advised employers that so long as performance reviews and appraisals are being carried out throughout people's careers, they can have a conversation about retirement, because retirement is part of one's career. So just as you would ask a younger worker, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time, with the expectation that they would talk about the different kind of jobs within the company that they might want to try out, maybe an older worker would also find it very useful to have the same conversation, because they might have some expectations of what they want to do over the next 5 years. And right now, as a final part, I'll talk about 5 areas, 5 HR topics, which cover the age demographic issue. The first, of course, is health and well-being. The aging of the workforce should coincide with some improvements in working conditions, so that older workers are working in healthy work conditions and not working in physically and mentally demanding jobs, which are going to decrease their life expectancy. And we already have the example of the Finnish workability system, which is kind of like the gold standard of health maintenance. And the key to the workability model is to have interventions throughout one's career, and not just at the later end of working lives. But healthy workplaces can be improved not just through the use of technology and assistive equipment, but also through maybe some changes in work design, so that older workers have some more control and autonomy as to how they carry out their work, so that they can manage work and their and their health conditions. About 43% of the 50 plus workforce have at least one health condition which they're maintaining and managing throughout while still in work. Second issue is skills and training and moving towards a lifelong learning approach. And this can be of some benefit both to the older worker and to the employer. It's a benefit to the employer because sometimes modest intervention and investment in older workers to keep their productivity and their work up to date and making best use of technology to carry out their work can pay dividends for the employer. The problem is that often skills and training is seen as a negative. It's seen as something that's punitive for poor performance. And organizations that have a universal approach to training, everybody takes part in training and everybody can see how their training benefits not only the organization in terms of improved productivity, but also improves their lot through advanced career opportunities, are more likely to see older workers participate. There's also some employers who have adopted some measures for reciprocity. So older workers that take part in training, but also mentor and support their younger workers, see some dividends that way and some improvements for both lots. When it comes to recruitment, you still see some age discriminatory practices of organizations, either directly or indirectly. The case study of the service leavers is an example of where organizations take a very rational approach. Let's choose the person who's younger, who has the more up-to-date skills, even though that might have an implication when it comes to access to jobs for older workers. There's some evidence to suggest that even if organizations don't have active age discriminatory practices, they might encourage agencies or so forth to only send them younger workers, and organizations that have what you might call talent pipelines are more likely to see older workers put themselves forward for promotion or lateral transfer opportunities because opportunities for career development are extended to everybody and not just younger workers. You have flexible working, which is a way in which organizations can support older workers, especially those who want to combine work with retirement activities. In the UK, as the right to request flexible working has been embedded, organizations have found that formal interventions like flexitime or job sharing or so forth, which maybe 5 or 10 years ago were considered to be impossible, are suddenly possible for people in different types of occupations. Organizations are dealing with issues of flexibility in terms of career progression, trying to avoid what's sometimes called the mommy track of jobs by giving more universal access to people in different types of occupations to different types of jobs. Which would be flexible. And then finally, you have the issue of performance management, which I said before, managers are sometimes reluctant to take part in, and it's a reason why older workers are less likely to have an appraisal than older workers, because it's a difficult conversation. Might be particularly difficult for a younger manager to performance manage an older worker. But this can be bad for the older worker because it might restrict opportunities for retraining, for lateral career transfers and so forth, which might keep them productive in work, but also might keep them motivated and happy in work. And that's all I had to say on the issue of age management. The big takeaway from this is, although aging is universal, it's something that's happening in all parts of the world, the approaches that employers and other businesses are taking to this can be very different. It's different in terms of the context where a country is at a particular point in time, but also what are the norms and practices of businesses around the world. I'm Matt Flynn. I hope you enjoyed these videos, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion on the subject in a plenary session. So thank you very much.